out. Hopefully the older players talk with the younger players, but I've always been of the mindset that the players that want to be good are going to find ways to work out and keep their skills sharp, and the players that maybe aren't as committed, they're not going to be committed whether they're with you in their location or they're back home with their families. So, but me, I get up in the morning and I always read. So, but this is definitely, cutting into my outdoor time. And, I knew I was a sports fan, but not having any live sports has certainly, put me watching a lot of different series on TV that I normally wouldn't watch.
What are Russ' favorite series right now?
I wouldn't say they're my favorite. Let's just say I've completed Schitt's Creek and The Americans and Peaky
Blinders.
Peaky Blinders, yeah.
That's awesome.
I've a lot of hours have spent doing nothing of value. So,
well, that's also important for you, Russ. And I know that you recently got a contract extension at Penn State. You want to tell me a little bit about that? What are your plans moving on?
Well, I mean, I've always felt that I've been here 42 years, so I never felt the contract was critical. I didn't have a contract for the first 34 years that I was here.
Wow.
And so the contract wasn't critical to me. But certainly recruiting is a very interesting part of life. And it just seemed that a lot of players that we were communicating with, one of the major questions that always seemed to come up were the idea that, I was leaving. And I kept trying to, when I did talk to some of the players or their parents, I would say, I've been at Penn State. There's been 75 different head coaches at the other Big Ten schools for the length of time I've been here. And it seems
unbelievable.
It seems to me they should be asking those people how long they're going to be somewhere instead of talking to me about that. But, I guess that's why it's called recruiting. It's not called ethics. It's called recruiting. So, but, the contract is what it is. Whether I complete it, it's no different than other people who have contracts. So, it was to, in my mind, shut some of the jackals up.
Well, that's kept you so relevant throughout the years, Russ. Like, how have you found a way to continue to relate so well with every generation, and be so engaging into this process?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not sure because I think, it changes all the time. But, I think in the early years, the players embraced the opportunity to be recognized, as females having the opportunity for someone to tell them that it was okay to be competitive and to actually treat them. I coached, as I coached professional men's volleyball a long time ago in Puerto Rico, and I coached men before that. So I look at it as I coach men and women the same way because the net height's different. The uniforms are a little different. The rules are supposed to be identical, but basically the game should be the same and people should play the same. And to me, the number one factor has always been playing hard. So that's not to say skills aren't important, but to me, the most important variable is trying to get people to play hard. And, I've always been trying to get people to recognize that over the long haul is just trying to continue to do that. So, that's always been my goal. And, when we can get in front of some kids or have kids come to camp and, try and get them to understand that if they want to be a part of our program, I don't care how tall they are. I don't care about a lot of factors, but I really do care about that one.
Let me try to show you one picture here for a minute and try to see what kind of memories do you have about it. Okay. So let's go
to the microfiche.
Right here. And then
Yeah.
who are those people right there?
Well, that was the team I was coaching, and there were some terrific players there. I know that 18, that was Jorge Altieri, and Jorge was like the owner of the team and was a former volleyball player slash track and field athlete for Puerto Rico. Number 15 next to him was Ruben Adorno, who was a great basketball player in their professional league. And there were some great pictures of me and Ruben that I really enjoyed because Ruben didn't speak any English at all. So I loved it. But he was an adult, and I loved how hard he played. I know 7 next to me is Papote Belvis, and his father and uncle played on the team in Adjuntas many, many years ago. I know 13, who's holding the ball in front, was Nelson, was the setter of the team. Number 8 to the side over there was, a guy I spent most of my out of practice time was Pancho Manay, was probably my closest friend there. So yeah, I recognize them. Obviously that was 45 years ago, and maybe even a few more years. Oh, that's a nice clear picture there. That looks a lot better. Yeah. And so number 5 is Popo, and Arnaldo Rodriguez, number 6. So I might remember their nicknames, and Juan Duran, and so yeah, they were. It was an interesting thing because they didn't speak English.
How do you communicate?
Well, Pancho would kind of interpret, and Jorge 18 would interpret a little bit.
Okay.
And but Nelson, the setter, didn't speak English. Five Popo, he didn't speak any English, but I think. But I have to tell you, I really enjoyed my time in Puerto Rico. I thought the people of Adjuntas were terrific. They loved their team. I thought, I was 21 years old, and I had a great experience there. I really did.
Look at that one.
That's a nice picture. Yeah. Yeah.
So for the ones that don't know, like I said, I'm going to say in Spanish, Russ coachó en Puerto Rico hace mucho tiempo y cuando tenía 21 años y comenzando su carrera. Y él es el de la camisa blanca, obviamente, y los pantalones cortos amarillos. Credit to your friend Tony Quiles and volleyball historian in Puerto Rico, Ivan Jimenez, that they sent me all these pictures and told me about it, Russ.
And credit to me representing Ball State University instead of George Williams. That I'm a graduate of George Williams, but there I am representing. And this looks like our home facility. Not that we didn't have a normal court. I just know you can tell by that nice fence around the side where the fans would grab the fence and drink their liquor and shake the fence, and there'd be one gate in for the teams to get in and out. So yeah, it was interesting.
Was it always like crowded and everything? Like how was the environment at that time?
It was, and number 11 is Juan Duran there on the side. He wasn't in the first picture. It was, we have big crowds. Yeah, we were supposed to have another player who has since passed away, Chiquilo, but back then the police were after him, so we couldn't get him.
Oh no!
But it was. We had one match where the police had to shoot off their gun to get us out of the court. So yeah, I thought it was all. Could have written a book on that experience, but I certainly enjoyed it.
Who's that person over there, Russ?
I'm hoping that's Joe.
That is.
Joe Panelli was him and his wife were they were family to me there. It was a wonderful, wonderful man, and he also didn't speak any English. But I would eat my meals at his house, and just I just love that guy. It was wonderful.
Your friend Tony was telling me that you had to actually, you and your team had to actually change on his house because there were no locker rooms at that point. So that he used to live in front of the gym, right?
Yeah, he lived across the streets. Yeah, so they would have to change. I would just walk there. I didn't have a car back then. I didn't want a car. I wasn't going anywhere. I was in Adjuntas. I wasn't leaving Adjuntas, and. But yeah, the players would come from all over. Some would come for practice. It was, traveling was a little bit different there than now. Now the roads are much nicer in Puerto Rico. And, so for the players that live there, they could make it to practice. Some of them would get jammed up, and, that was life.
Tell me, a couple of people also have told me that you are the one that brought the dive to Puerto Rico. And then number two, you brought the new concept of actually passing close to the net at that point because you wanted your second pass to be aggressive, but then referees would not allow it.
Well, for sure, we had to play defense. And the problem was there were only 3 indoor courts on the island back then. But you still had to play defense. So the first day I got there, we went out into the streets and did diving on the street and I did it with them because I was young and in shape. So that would have been a better picture. So yeah, I thought, I had an idea of what we needed to look like, and we made it to the playoffs. We had a competitive team, and but again, I thought it was a great experience, and I enjoyed my time. And then a few years back, we had a player from Penn State go and play in Adjuntas, and that kind of completed it for me. That a player from he was a player from Mexico went and played.
Mr. Ivan Contreras.
Yes, true gentleman. And when I talked to the people there, they said he was a consummate professional. So that was. Because he was really a quality young man when he was in college as well.
How do you end up then at Penn State, Russ? What brings you there? From Puerto Rico? Did you go straight to Penn State or no?
No, I mean actually, what was interesting is when I graduated from George Williams, I was coaching the men and the women with Jerry Angle. I was the assistant coach, and then Jim Coleman, who was the 68 Olympic coach, and that's how Jorge Altieri knew him, wanted him. So him and Jerry Angle went down to Puerto Rico to do a clinic, and they wanted one of them to stay and coach the team. And of course, they couldn't do that. Both of them were working, and I was a part-time coach and doing a lot of bad part-time jobs, and so for me it was perfect. So they came back on a Sunday, and I was there 2 days later in Ponce, getting picked up to coach the team. So I coached the team. Then I came back and went to Nebraska and got my master's degree. But when I came back, I sent Armando Zavala, Dr. Zavala, to George Williams. So, he went there. So 2 players went there and helped them win the national championship. And then after that, after a year and a half in Nebraska, I came to Penn State. And Armando had a nephew, Jose Roballo.
Wow, the legend.
And I had Jose, and I got Jose to come to our men's team here. And then he had a good friend named Javier Gaspar. and then Javier and Carlos and Jorge. And then all of a sudden we had an incredible pipeline of players from Puerto Rico for the men's team. I had a couple of female players from Puerto Rico, but not nearly as many as for the men, because there's just not many opportunities for the men's team. But, and I also felt that, and it may be different now, but then it seemed that the families in Puerto Rico were a little more open to letting their sons go to the United States to play, but they were keeping a little closer eye on their daughters, just sending them away. But, at one point we had 3, 4, 5 guys on the team from Puerto Rico. So there was a real migration. So I really helped the men's team that way.
And we're really grateful for the doors that you opened for us, at Penn State. And I'm also curious, Russ, how you changed the dynamic of California being the main area for the best volleyball in the U.S. And then there comes Penn State and establish this volleyball empire that you have created up there. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I mean, certainly, California has always had great success in, volleyball. UCLA's men's team with Al Skates having won all, 20 plus championships or 18 championships was unprecedented, and certainly the success of the California teams. But certainly, the Midwest was always good. Back in the day, I think the top players in the Midwest might have been kind of handpicked, and they went to the West Coast. But I think in time, when Midwest volleyball became a little more serious, we became a little more relevant, I think, when we joined the Big Ten 25 years or so ago, because at that point we went to full scholarships. Prior to that, we were an independent team, and then we were a member of the Atlantic 10 Conference. So when we became a member of the Big Ten, that enabled us to compete on equal footing with the other teams just by having 12 scholarships. So, the 12 scholarships made it a little bit better. We could recruit a little bit better. And certainly I think what 12 scholarships does for schools is if you make a mistake, it's not as relevant. It doesn't jump out at you. Whereas if you have 6 scholarships and you make a mistake, it kills you. And if you have 3 scholarships, it's even worse. So, in the early years when I didn't have many scholarships, it was really a challenge. But certainly a lot of the success we've had coincided with the university putting more money into the program. I've had great staff over the years, and it always comes down to the players. The players are the ones that play the game. They work hard. They make the commitment to make sacrifices, to work hard, and to give up some of their individual goals maybe and ambitions to be a better team player, to really give the team a chance to be successful.
Speaking of that, who was the player that you can actually point to that's when you said, you know what, there's a turning point here. We have something special going on. Like, was there a player that made you feel that way?
I don't think so. And it would be like you can't really pick your best players. We've been really fortunate. We've had a lot of great players, and there's been a lot of players that have contributed and yet didn't get a lot of recognition because they didn't, their statistics didn't jump off the board at you. But, they did a lot of things that made the team function at a high level. So, certainly the stretch where we won 4 national championships and had, 4 players that went on to play on the national team, Megan Hodge, Krista Harmato, Nick Fawcett, Alicia Glass, all those 3 of those 4 girls played in the Olympics. And, Blair Brown and Ari Wilson were, those 2 girls were girls that were 4-time national champions. So there's only been 3 players that have ever been 4-time national champions. And it was those 2 and Alyssa DeRico, who was our libero. So, you know, it was a great collection back then. But, you know, even when we had those players, and we had a couple of years that were really outstanding, and every day we went into practice and worked really hard and had to find ways to get better. And, you know, whether it was bringing in practice players, you know, and having Dennis Devalier from the men's team come in and play pepper with people just, you know, on the side to keep Dennis's game. You know, I remember hitting balls at Dennis to make Dennis have to increase his range a little bit, you know. So, you know, those are the things that, you know, you have to do. You have to have players that want to be in the gym to get better.
And Dennis Del Valle always talk about that experience with you, not just that, but also the conversations that you had with him for personal growth, for professional development. Like what are keys that we can use as coaches that, for example, that you use between 2007 and 2010 to keep that special group motivated? How do you motivate players usually, Russ? Do you think that it comes from, you know, intrinsically, or you think that you have a role there?
Well, I mean, I think if you've attracted players and you've had some interaction with them about, you know, what the anticipation and expectations are for them, then you can have that conversation once they get there. You know, Dennis was a great case study because he was terrific. And, you know, we went with our team, we went to Brazil. And when we were in Brazil, Bernardinho let us videotape his team training. Wow. and they were the #1 team in the world. And their libero at that point was the best libero in the world. So, you know, we're watching the video, and then I come back and I go to Dennis, okay, you need to come watch video, and I need you to watch this guy and watch what are the things he does that makes him special to his team, his energy, his contribution, his court presence. So, you know, players are always going to do what they do. And, you know, the best players are always going to keep their eyes open and try and get better. And unfortunately, the players that can slow a team down are the ones that think you're always picking on them. And, you know, that's always the problem, I think, you know.
Do you think that, you know, that teaching and coaching are the same, Russ? Like, how much of you as a teacher, you know, it's involved in your coaching every day?
Well, certainly it's changed. You know, in the 70s, or even when I was, you know, in Puerto Rico, you know, I had skills, physical skills. I could play, I could jump, I could do things. My early years at Penn State, I could jump and hit and have to do all those things. And then as time progresses, you need to bring in other people to do those things because your body lets you down. And now it's more important that you would lose credibility instead of your ego telling you that you're the coach and you need to show that you're the coach and then you're in control. So, you know, at some point in time, you need to bring in other people that can allow you to coach and use your mind and use your words to try and get the players to understand what they need to do. And so, you know, I think there's a progression that needs to take place. And I also just think there's a lot of ways to play the game. I don't just think there's one way to play the game and one style all the time. You know, I watch international matches and just to watch teams play, just to see, you know, there's tall teams, there's short teams, there's different levels of play, there's different techniques, and yet, you know, some of the intangibles on why teams win or lose always come down to how does that coach maximize the personnel they have to be the best they can be. And that's, you know, that's really the essence of coaching and teaching, is getting the players that you're responsible for to embrace the plan. So, you know, if you're a good teacher or a good coach, you're in sales and you're trying to sell what it is you think this group needs to do. You know, if we're teaching young kids, you know, so when I was in Puerto Rico, my practice was at 7 o'clock at night. I had all day. So I would go behind the court, and there'd be kids that were playing hooky or whatever the case may be, and I would hit ground balls and coach baseball for 3 hours in the day. I never asked them why they weren't in school, because I wasn't a truant officer, but I was a former baseball player, and I was looking for something to do myself.
You always talk about how special like someone like Darcy Darton was and how she defines the type of player that you look for, you know, and aside from talent, more of her attitude. Can you talk a little bit about that? As a winner, like you talk about like specific things that, you know, intangibles that she had that you always look for.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great example. I got a little note from Darcy this morning, so that's appropriate that you bring her name up. You know, Darcy was unique, at least for the people that would understand. She won a high school championship, a junior championship for AAUs, and a college championship as a freshman, all in the same calendar year. So she won a championship with 3 different teams, all in the same year. And that would just be, maybe there's some other people that have done that, but Darcy did that, and Darcy did that because she played hard. And, you know, was Darcy the perfect player? That's not the question. The question is, Darcy always competed. And I love the fact that she was not afraid. And because she wasn't afraid, she was one of those individuals that the team could count on. And we had older players that maybe had more skill and maybe had more experience in certain things, but Darcy had experience in competing, and, you know, and a lot of our success came to play in that. And, you know, that was the year we lost the first 2 games in the Final Four to a great Texas team, and came back and won the next 3 in Tampa. So it was a great win for us, and Darcy was a great contributor in that match.
Russ, I'm going to summarize in Spanish for a minute. So, es importante con lo que está hablando Russ ahora mismo, de que él está usando de ejemplo una jugadora que él piensa que es la que representa lo que él busca, que es competitividad y una ganadora. Una jugadora que realmente sabía cómo hacer a sus teammates mejores. Quizás no era la más alta que él ha tenido, ni la de más potencia, ni nada por el estilo. Y los invito a que vean esos videos de los campeonatos de él, donde estaba Darcy, que fue uno específicamente, el más importante, donde ella era esa jugadora clave. Y por eso él la determina de esta manera. Russ, and looking back on your, you know, all your success, are there any games or any years that you know keep you awake at night thinking about like any regrets, like as a coach? Because, you know, me as a coach, I think about the times that I have failed more than the other times. Like, man, I wish I could have done this, I wish I could have done that. Like, what about you?
You know, I would agree with that. I think more about the matches that I made bad decisions in, as opposed to the ones that we won. And many times the bad decisions were that I gave somebody too much rope. I said, hey, she's hitting 350 for the year, and instead of the fact where she was hitting 0, I should have taken her out and put somebody else in, that she was in the tank. I thought she would get herself together, and I put too much trust in somebody, and it probably was a bad decision. And it's situations like that. But I think I would also just counter that by saying that, you know, I've been here for a long time. I think we've won some matches where it wasn't our best team, and we've lost some matches where I thought we had our best teams. So I think maybe some things balance out, And the longer you're in coaching, you just have to keep battling, and you tell the players to keep battling, and coaches have to do the same thing.
What is your proudest moment, Russ, so far? If you finish coaching today, what would be that proudest moment?
And I just think it's the body of work. I would say the thing that I would say I'm proud of would be the fact that the success that we had was in a sport where we didn't really do it with players that were all local players, that we had to build a program and attract players and have people buy into our culture. I would think in some sports it's easier to do it when you have players that are local. I would love to have had a state where there are always half a dozen great Division I players every year, even if you had to split them with someone else. If you get a couple and somebody else gets a couple, it'd be great. But it's always been a challenge. We've had some players for sure in Pennsylvania that have been good, but it's always been a challenge that we've had to look elsewhere, and recruiting has become way more competitive. So it's harder to go into other geographical areas and try and get players, especially with the way the recruiting calendar has changed. You don't have access to seeing people. Even though I, had early access in Puerto Rico, I haven't recruited Puerto Rico aggressively. I've had a couple of, good. The last two players I've had that were very good were here for a couple of years and both transferred. So, that didn't work out. But, I had a wonderful relationship. I'm really fond of Wilma. I thought, I'm a huge fan of Wilma.
And with Puerto Ricans, and internationals, like how have they changed the recruiting game in the NCAA? Like, what role are they playing right now?
Well, I think the international players, maybe more the Europeans than I don't really look at the Canadians and the Puerto Rican players as much as international players, although I guess they qualify in some ways, if certainly if they would have to take the TOEFL maybe. Mm-hmm. But certainly the international European kids, there's been a lot of great ones over the years that have come in and made great impacts on teams, and I think there'll be more and more over the years, just because of the recruiting that's taking place. There's been a number of schools over the years, I think, that have really had a head start and are really more natural for recruiting Europeans. Just their schools are more conducive to getting some of those players. But, in a sport like volleyball or basketball, where you're dealing with 5 or 6 kids on the court, one player can really make a big impact on the outcome of the team. So if you can get a point scorer in either of those two sports, I think it's a real big factor.
One of the things that we're struggling the most in Puerto Rico, it's youth development. We specialize players too early, too much, and then we end up burning them at early ages. And then opportunities, of course, become limited long term. If you had total control of youth development, Russ, like, what are the most concerning things for you right now, and is there a solution for it?
Well, I mean, certainly in Puerto Rico, my experience has been they're so good when they're young. I mean, when you go to nationals and AAUs, the 12s and the 13s, those teams from Puerto Rico are so good at the younger levels, but the challenge is they don't get much bigger. So that always ends up being the problem is, what you're seeing when they're 12 or 13 is when you look at their parents over there sitting on the crowd, you're like, hey, that they are 5'6", 5'7", because their parents are 5'6", 5'7", but their skills are so good and they're fast and they're fiery, and I loved it. When I had a little junior club we didn't have a club, but I was teaching the little kids in Puerto Rico in Adjuntas when I was there, and I thought it was great teaching the 12 and 13-year-olds. But I think that's the challenge. It's that occasional really big kid. What happens with that player, and certainly they're more far and few between. But there are getting bigger players, and there's been some terrific players. I think Puerto Rico's national team, the women's team, has made good progress over the last few years. They've had some good players that have come to the U.S. and done well, and so I think if you could get them to play together and sustain it, but funding has always been a problem for the women and the men from the time when I was there. I fielded calls about what I like to be the coach in Puerto Rico, and it's it's a challenge. So, but youth sports is $1 billion business, and it's a problem because the people who have the most money are willing to spend the most money for their kids, and unfortunately, when that happens, many of the kids with the most potential get left behind because there's no program available because they don't have the money to participate. So, that makes it a little tough. That kind of is what, when you look at what's happened, why Cuba and the Dominicans have become so good. It's, one was a communist regime and the other was, a benefactor was smart enough to figure out, let's use kind of the blueprint that Cuba did. And, the Dominicans have developed a really good team, but there are those occasional years where Puerto Rico can beat them because they do have some really skilled players and can beat them on some occasions.
For the most part, Russ, one tendency on your teams is that you tend to stay, within the international rules type of deal where most of your players are usually every year all around. So you are really consistent with lineups, at least most of the years. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's not a lot of teams with 15 subs. It's not a lot of teams doing what you do, which is again, trying to get as many all around players as you can. And then also, how do you keep the ones not playing motivated?
Well, the second answer first is when, if I have a roster of 18 or 20 players, which is way too many, I just tell them that I can't guarantee you're going to play. But when I was on the team, I was the worst player. So I can appreciate being on the team, but that didn't mean I didn't care. It just meant the people on the team were better than me. So I can say to them, listen, if you want to be on the team and you're going to work hard and you're going to make the team better and you have good energy and you care about what we're trying to accomplish, then you can have a number and you can earn it and you can be a part of what we're trying to do. Now, the first question, especially as it deals with some of the bigger players. I've had some players that were big players and I'd say, hey, listen, you're a potential professional player if you elect to do that. It's up to you, but you're going to have to improve your all-around skills because a lot of times they specialize in high school or club, where if you're running a business, it's easier to have more players paying you the same amount of money. So I'm going to take a big kid out and put in a small kid. So now I have two sources of revenue instead of just making the one kid better. And that's a business model. That's not making the player better for the national team. But so I would say, hey, listen, it may take you some time, but you have to do this for you. And so there has been some learning curve issues, but there's also been some players that if the back row players are really good, they're going to play because I do want to win. But, in practice, we want those big kids to get better, to have skills, because whether we're playing 15 subs or 12 subs or 6 subs internationally, there's always going to be situations in a game where players have to be able to big kids have to go to the back row, in the occasional situation where a smaller kid may have to go in the front row, and they have to be able to play the game. They have to be comfortable with their ability to contribute to the team and play the game. So, we'll go through some of those scenarios in practice, so there's not a shock factor where they have to actually play out of their comfort zone.
One of the things that I also noticed is that most of your assistant coaches have gone into successful coaching careers moving on. What type of mentoring methods do you use on your program that they are able to be so successful when they move on, Russ?
Well, first off, I've been here so long that I've had lots of people that have been associated and worked with the program and have done wonderful things, and I want them to do whatever it is they do well. So I'm a real direct person, so I'll try and get them to do what they do well, and then if it changes that I have to do something different because last year I did this, but now I have a new staff and I have to change and do something else, then that's what I have to do. So it might be bad for me, but good for the team. But I always let them have their voice. I think it's important that they have their voice, as long as they don't talk too much. I want the players to play. I don't like lots of talk. I don't talk much in practice.
The 30-second rule that you have mentioned multiple times in videos.
What's that?
You have mentioned multiple times in your videos that you have a 30-second rule about talking.
Well, I have a meeting at the end, but no, I don't talk. I don't want to talk. It's not about me talking. It's about them playing, and I always say the same thing about, well, I'm not playing. And I go, listen, we play twice a week. We practice 4 times a week. You have twice as many opportunities to show why you should be playing. So be quiet and get back in the drill. Very, very few things happen by talking about it.
Measuring performance, Russ. How is that during the year? What do you use? What do you like to use during practice? Someone as you love numbers, but it's something really important to you. How do you bring that into practice and then during a season?
Well, I did my thesis on statistics in the 70s, which was before Moneyball and the whole sabermetrics world took over sports and the different industries. So I think there's a value to it, but I think the most successful people in coaching and a lot of people in business, a lot of things just comes from what they feel and what they see, and they get paid to make decisions. And a lot of times they will look at the numbers to make those decisions. Maybe they're afraid to make a decision that's so big without looking at all the numbers. But a lot of times, I think, people make decisions based on what they see and what they feel. I tell people all the time, I may not always be right, but I'm not afraid to make a decision.
Because that's how you feel. You're going with the feel.
Yeah. So we look at statistics. So for sure, we'll do serving and passing every day. I tell the girls you have to serve tough. I want the passers to be having to pass hard served balls. So we'll record serving and passing and we'll put it on a piece of paper. The next day they'll look at it. And then before I leave practice, I take it and throw it in the garbage because that was yesterday's numbers. Tomorrow we'll have another set of numbers. But hopefully the good passers will demonstrate they're good passers and the best servers will become the best servers, and those will be the people that play. But if you're a good server, it'll be because we can't pass you. And if you're a good passer, it'll be because whoever serves at you, you can pass them. And then we'll have confidence in you and the team will have confidence in you. But certainly when we get into team play, for sure, we all look at some numbers, and so we look at rotations and we look at different things that, you always, as a coach, you want to try and squeeze a point here and there and try and give your team the best opportunity I had this conversation with someone yesterday asking me, should you start your best hitter left front, middle, right? Where should you put him? And I'm like, hey, you should, depending on the level of play, you should have your best servers serving first. If you can have your best 3 servers serving first, maybe that's the most important variable, and the lowest levels moving up to the international level. When you get to the highest level of play, then you can look at something else. But, junior, youth, high school, even in some college, if you can go with your best servers, you might find yourself winning more matches just because of that.
Okay, I'm going to say it in Spanish a little bit of it. Lo que está hablando es diciendo de que sí, él se basa en estadísticas durante las prácticas y es importante para él y él las mide, pero ahora la verdad es cómo él se sienta, o sea, es el sentido, el feeling que él tiene sobre lo que está pasando con este tipo de jugadoras dentro de la cancha, que es lo que lo hace tomar las decisiones finales en lo que él está haciendo. And then, Russ, I asked you this in person in the NCAA Final Four, but I want to ask you again, what do you keep during matches? I see your book, I see you writing, I see you with the same demeanor all the time. You're very calm, throughout the game. What is it that is keeping you that calm, by keeping those, the whatever numbers or notes that you are having on your book?
Well, first off, I am calm. So I think people should be who they are. That's not to say that, some coaches shouldn't benefit from, orchestrating some things that their team benefits from, a little fire versus, but I think, how you coach in practice and how you coach in games, there should be some consistency. But, I'm recording some information that I'm trying to help so that I make decisions in the game that can help us in the game. So, I can look at the stat sheet or what the data volley or whatever, the stats that are being printed out by the computers that other people are looking at, but I'm looking at things that I think we should have done well. So if the other team does something and it scores, I want to know, did they do it because they did it good or because we did it bad? But the statistics will identify that they did it good, but to me, there might be a decision based on, did they do it well or did we do it bad? So if we're doing too many things bad, I need to either make a decision on taking that player out or discussing why it is that skill is scoring. So a lot of my notes are dealing with trying to win that game and that match, I'm not trying to reinvent the game.
You have mentioned how the measuring the errors and where they come from is really important to you. What effect does that have in the game, and why is that so important to you?
Well, I mean, the bad thing about that is everybody just thinks you're a negative person because you're just they just think, oh, you're so negative. And especially if you're coaching females, they want everything to be so positive all the time. And then I go, okay, then I'm going to be positive that you're making too many mistakes.
Okay.
But you can't make a lot of mistakes and win. So that's the bottom line. So if one of your players has 3 kills and she's got the most kills on your team, but she has 3 or 4 hitting errors and 2 or 3 serving errors and 1 or 2 passing errors and a net violation, at the timeout you can say, hey, you have 3 kills for us and they have 12 points and you've given them 10 of those 12 points. So they've earned 2 points and you've given them 10. So you're the leading scorer in the match, 12 points, 10 for them, 2 for us. So, I want to know where the points are coming from and, but players have to be conscious of it. Not everybody, I don't think, should be thinking that they should be making all of the points. Some players have to be facilitators. Some people have to be the point scorers. And some people have to just be the individuals that go out there and keep everything moving smoothly.
Russ, what is the advice that you have for players in this hard crisis going on that that they cannot train in the gym, they cannot go anywhere? What's the best thing to do right now for players?
Well, I mean, I would think they can certainly go online and watch they can go on and watch video. Hopefully they can go on, if they don't have access to video of when they were playing, they, for the younger levels, they can certainly go on and find good college matches to watch, or international matches. They should find international matches and try and, look at the players that are playing the position they play. I tell our players to watch the men's game, because I think, to me, that's the best, that's the highest level of the game in the world. And just having a chance to see how those guys play it. Obviously, the physical nature and some of the things they do is so unbelievable, and it doesn't really translate, but at least it gives them a visual of what it can be for those 2 or 3 kids. You might have a player that can do some of those things, and they have to push the envelope, and you can't have all of your players try something. But for the one player that can have a great jump spin serve, she needs to do it. But, I think if a player can go outside with the ball and work on passing and passing it against the wall and doing certain things, ball handling is ball handling. Mental practice would, I have a degree in sports psychology. I might not use it during the season, but now if I was telling people what to do, I would tell them to, mentally practice using imagery of, them playing the game and executing the skills correctly, and how are they contributing, and how are they communicating, and how are they handling good things, bad things. Those things are all valuable, I think, in keeping them touching the game.
Russ, my last question: how would someone that has achieved everything through my eyes stays hungry as you are right now, and how do you want to be remembered?
Well, I appreciate that, but it's I hate to make it out that it's when I'm done, I'm going to be done. That's it. I'm going to wish everybody the best, and it's like this. I want everybody to be healthy and happy and take care of their families, and it's a game, but you should do the best you can in whatever you elect to do. And that's all I've tried to do.
I'm really grateful and honored to have been talking to you today, because one of the reasons that I admire you so much, and I know so many others do, is that you have always stayed humble. Your success has not determined the way that you treat people. And I think that that's one of the biggest lessons that I have taken from you throughout the years. You are always there for anyone that reach out to you anytime. You're always there to say hi. And again, you have not allowed what you have achieved to determine who you are. So for that, and I'm really grateful. I know that people in Puerto Rico are grateful as well. Everyone around the world as well. Russ, you have done so much for the game, and I know you will continue to be. You're probably just starting. So again, gracias, amigo, por tu tiempo and for the opportunity, my friend.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm just a Ibero from Adjuntos.
People remember you a lot from those times, Russ. Así que, hey, anytime you want to come back and just coach in the Pro League again, man, the island is waiting for you, and maybe smoke some cigars and stuff and wear your shorts and Hawaiian shirt that you like so much.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. See you, man. And thanks again.
Adios.
Adios.
Okay.